Hey everyone, thank you for joining me for today's video. I cannot believe we are already at the end of May and it is time to choose our June TBR. I've been excited for this the past couple of days. I've been looking forward to recording this video because I cannot wait to see what is on my June TBR. I am a little bit nervous about this month though, I'm not going to lie, because May's TBR game went so well, so did my May cozy reading game. They were all just very, very nice to me. And I'm scared that June is not going to be so nice to make up for May. But you know what? Time will only tell. While I'm nervous about this game, overall I am excited about June because I finally figured out a schedule for posting videos. I'll be posting every Friday, and the videos to look forward to in June are a scavenger hunt video, a mythology-based reading game video, and then a color wheel challenge video as well. And then of course we'll end June with our July TBR video. So I cannot wait to play all those games, and I am hoping I can get some books on my June TBR read in those games. So we'll be kind of strategizing this June TBR if it's nice enough to let us do that. But before we get to our June TBR, we have to see how I did in May. In May, we ended up with 9 rolls, but only 8 books because luck was with us in May. So let's see how I did. First up, we'll do our prompts. So we had the prompt takes place on a mountain or volcano, and I did read that book. It was Batu and the Search for the Golden Cup, so completed this prompt. Then we had to read a sophomore novel by an author, so the second book published by that author. I'm currently reading A Sprinkle of Spirits. I am almost done. I have, I think, like 80 pages to go, so this will definitely be done by the end of May. Today is Wednesday. So the 28th, I believe, so we have 3 or 4 more days to finish this book. Then we had a book set in a small town, and I read Hot Property by Suzanne O'Leary and completed this prompt. Then we had a book with flowers on the cover or in the title, and I am currently reading The Rose Bargain by Sasha Payton Smith. I am probably about a quarter of the way done, but again, we have 4 days to go, so this will definitely be done by the end of May, so that prompt will be complete. And then our last prompt was a book with a number in the title, and I did read Darker by 4 and completed that prompt as well. So we are 5 for 5 for our book prompts. Now we have to look at our jar pulls. So we had 4 jar pulls. We had the 25 books in 2025 jar pull, which was Darker by 4, and did complete that one. That was our lucky draw. Then we had 2 books from our new release jar. First up was The Dream Hotel, which I did read. And then The Spirit Collection of Thorn Hall, which I read as well. Then lastly, we had our science fiction / fantasy award-winning nominee jar, and I pulled When You Reach Me, and I completed that book as well. So we did it. We have done it. We have completed our May TBR, which is a rarity to complete a monthly TBR, so I'm super excited. So what that means is we get to take away the last punishment we added, which was to pull 2 books out of the first jar we landed on. So now we will only have to pull 1. We still have our 4 boarding passes. So for those who are new to the game, if you land on the boarding pass, you have to go all the way back to the beginning of the board and complete all the books you accumulated up until that point. So not the greatest. If we do complete our June TBR though, we'll start taking away some of those boarding passes. All right, so I think that's all we got for now. It's time to start playing this game, and hopefully June will be just as nice as May, but you know, we will have to see. So let's pull up our spring game board and go ahead and place our tokens and then do our first roll. Here we go. Wish us luck. All right, so here's our game board for June. It will be the last time you're seeing this game board this year. It'll come back again next April, but starting in July, we'll be moving on to our summer game board. So first things first, let's go ahead and randomize our tokens, and I'm going to quickly put those on the board, and then we'll be back and analyze how the board looks for June. All right, here's our game board. This is a very mean setup to this game. I am starting to get very scared on how this TBR is going to go. We have 2 boarding passes at the end of the game and a time for vacation card. All of which mean that we are moving backwards, at least halfway through the board, because the closest time for vacation to move backwards to is all the way up here. This is not a great setup. I am not sure how this TBR is going to go. I said I was nervous before. Well, I think I'm even more nervous at this point. but all we can do is play and see what happens. So I got my 8-sided die, so let's go ahead and do the first roll for June 2025. Here we go. A 2. Making strong progress. Blue flower. Alright, we are not starting off great. We only rolled a 2. That doesn't get us very far on this board, but we did land on blue, so let's grab the blue bag and see what prompts we're looking at. Here is our blue bag, and here we have some title prompts, some miscellaneous prompts, and some series prompts. So let's shuffle these up and see what we get for our first prompt for June. I am excited to see what books we're going to fit in this month. Hopefully not too many. All right, so let's split the deck there. And our first prompt for June is, get the focus, a book with a name in the title. That can't be that hard, right? Let me go ahead and see what physical book options we have. I was right, that wasn't too hard. We got 2 options to go with. We have Emily Wilde's Map of the Otherlands, which is the second book in the Emily Wilde series. And we have Finley Donovan is Killing It. So we have a mystery and a cozy fantasy, historical fantasy. I really want to read both of these books, so this is making it a very difficult choice. They both just sound like fun books. I really enjoy the first book in the Emily Wilde series, and I really like the synopsis on this book, which is about Finley being a struggling novelist and then finding herself tangled up in a murder investigation. But I think the one I'm going to go with is Emily Wilde's Map of the Otherlands, because I just want to get through this series and see how it ends up. So Emily Wilde is an academic who studies fairies, and in the first book, she ends up going to, I think, some small island in Norway to study the fairies there. When she gets there, she's having like a lot of trouble connecting with the community until her fellow scholar, Wendell Bambleby, shows up, and he just finds him, he's a very charismatic guy and easily connects with the villagers, and that makes her mad because he's kind of her rival. But then the two end up having to work together to an end goal. So this book is a continuation as Emily Wilde continues to work on cataloging all the different types of fairies so that she can make a comprehensive encyclopedia of fairies at the end of her travels. So we will add this book as our first book in June, and hopefully we'll get to Finley Donovan on a later prompt. All right, let me look at my Kindle book. So for those who are new here, for every prompt, I choose a physical book as well as a Kindle book so that I kind of have a little bit more leeway on these prompts, so I can do a little bit of mood reading if I need to. I only have to read one of the books to complete the prompt. So every month, I just randomly choose 70 Kindle books to put on the list for that month. Those are the only books I can choose from. So let me go ahead and see what options we have for this prompt for this month. So the only real option we have for this month is Angela's Ashes by Frank McCourt, with Angela being the name in the title. This is a memoir of the author's childhood growing up as a poor child, poor family in Limerick, Ireland, after being born in Brooklyn to Irish immigrants who then moved the family back to Ireland. So this book won the Pulitzer Prize for biography/autobiography. It was very popular when it came out. I just never got around reading it, but I heard a lot of good things about it when it first came out, and that was written very eloquently. And the author was kind of really able to draw you into his life growing up in Limerick, Ireland. So this will be the book that we'll be adding for the Kindle option for our prompt that has to have a name in the title. So those are our first 2 books for June. Let's go ahead, bring up the game board, and get to roll number 2. All right, roll 2. A 3. Well, that's 1 better than 2, I guess. 1, 2, 3, and a pink flower. All right, roll number 2 did not go much better than roll number 1. We got a 3, and we landed on pink, so let's grab that bag. All right, so here's our pink bag. We have prompts in here that have to do with the cover of the book, some miscellaneous prompts, and some series prompts. Let's go ahead and mix these up. All right, there we go. Let's split the deck right here. This will be our prompt. Miscellaneous prompt. Let me get it to focus. Oh, there we go. All right, a book talk or booktube book. Well, that's super easy. Well, that's super easy. There are a ton of those. So I'm just going to find a book that I've seen on Book Talk or BookTube. Here we go. This shouldn't be that difficult. All right, so I'm going to go with Finley Donovan is Killing It for this one. I have seen this book on several BookTube videos, so I think this is an excellent choice. This is the first book in the Finley Donovan series by El Cosimano, and this book follows Finley Donovan, who is a novelist who one day is overheard discussing the plot of her new suspense novel with her agent over lunch, and she's mistaken to be a contract killer by some people, and she ends up accidentally accepting an offer to dispose of a problem husband. So it just sounds like a fun premise, a novelist being mistaken as a contract killer and then accepts a contract, which sounds like it's going to be a fun book, and definitely excited to read it. And I cannot wait to get to the rest of the series if I enjoy this as much as I think I am going to. So this will be our second physical book on our June TBR. Now, I don't know if I have any Book Talk TikTok books on my Kindle TBR because it's just a randomization of 2,000 books that I own. And I'm not sure if it pulled any popular books this time around. So let me take a quick look and see if I can find one. We may be stretching this a little bit though. All right, so I did find one book that came out last year. It is The Book of Doors by Gareth Brown. I feel like I saw this book on several people's YouTube. I can't really remember what exactly they said about it, but I do remember seeing it, so we're going to count this one. So this book follows Cassie, who one day is given this gift of a book called The Book of Doors, and it's a special book that gives the person who possesses it the power to walk through any door and travel anywhere that they want. But the Book of Doors is not the only magical book in the world. There are several other books that can do their own magical things, both wonderful things as well as dreadful things. And now Cassie and her best friend Izzy, are confronted by violence and danger, and the only person that can help them is Drummond Fox, who has his own secret magical library of magical books that he has hidden away for his own safekeeping because of the nameless evil that is haunting them all. So a fun fantasy book about books. You can't really go wrong with that. And I'm kind of intrigued to see what the other books that aren't mentioned in the synopsis do and what this evil is. So that will be our Kindle book option for a Book Talk or BookTube book. All right, 2 prompts down. Let's go ahead, bring up the game board and see what we get for roll number 3. All right, here's hoping for some bigger numbers, but not too big because we got a boarding pass and a time for vacation token straight ahead. All right, roll 3. A 5. That's danger. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Time for vacation, which means we're headed all the way back because that was the first time for vacation. All right, so starting at the beginning and taking a book out of our series jar. All right, so that's good news and bad news. The good news is we rolled a 5, which is a higher number than any other time we've rolled so far. Bad news is we ended up on a time for vacation token, which means since there is no other time for vacation behind us, we have to go all the way back to the beginning of the board and start over, essentially. And we don't even get to level up the die. If we land on a boarding pass, whenever I do that, I get to level up to the next highest dice. So going from a 8-sided dice to 10-sided dice. But because this was a time for vacation token, that is not an option. So we'll be sticking with the 8-sided die. What we do have to do, though, is take a book out of our series jar for the time for vacation token. All right, so this is our series jar. In here are the next books in 37 series that I am reading. I haven't pulled this. I feel like I haven't pulled from this jar in a couple of months now. So I'm kind of excited about it and see what series we're going to be continuing in the month of June. Hopefully it's a good one and not a long one. We have some long ones in here. We have The Wheel of Time. We have Mistborn, which is sort of long. But we have some really nice middle grade series and some novella series as well. So let's go with this one here. Oops, that's 2. I don't know if this will focus. I will try, but if not, I'll put the book cover on the screen. All right, so the series we will be continuing is Oh, we already read this, Meltwater, so that doesn't count. So if I read series for another reason, I don't go through and take them out. So there are some that I've already read in here. All right, attempt number 2. All right, here we go. Let's see if I read this one or not. No, so this is the Infinite Sea. Like I said, I'll put the picture up here. All right, so the Infinite Sea is the second book in the Fifth Wave series, which is a YA dystopian series that's set on Earth, where aliens have essentially taken over the Earth. And how they have done that is that they've been sending these waves of destruction to basically exterminate the humans. And the Fifth Wave was the most recent wave, where it was a sickness that is supposed to kill everyone, but some people end up being immune, including the main character, Cassie. Basically, the premise of the book is life or death. Who's going to win, the humans or the aliens? So it's been a while since I read the first book in the series, but I remember most of what happened. So I don't think it should be any issue for me jumping into the second book. I remember the first one being a very quick read, being a YA dystopian novel, so hopefully this one won't take me too long either. But that will be our third book on our TBR, The Infinite Sea by Rick Yancey, which is the second book in the Fifth Wave series. All right, so back to the beginning of the board. Let's go ahead and do our fourth roll of the game. All right, on to roll 4. We don't even get to level up the die because it was a time for vacation, not a boarding pass, so continuing on with our 8-sided die, here we go. A 7, that is more like it. Another blue. So that was better. We rolled a 7, which is much better than 2s and 3s, and we landed on the blue bag again. So in here are our title prompts, miscellaneous, and series prompts. So let's go ahead and draw our third prompt of the game, which will choose our fourth book options for the game. All right, let's split the deck here. This will be our prompt. It's a miscellaneous prompt. There we go. All right, so we got an author from a random state. So what we are going to do is bring up a state randomization generator. We'll generate 5 states, and we have to find a book by an author from one of those states. This shouldn't be that hard. All right, I pulled a random state generator up on my iPad. You should see it up here. The states that are listed are the ones that I automatically came up with. There's only 4, so you can see that I didn't cheat. But let's go ahead, hit generate, and see what 5 states we get. All right, we have Nebraska, Washington, D.C., New Hampshire, Michigan, and Maine. So those are pretty populated states. So I feel like we can find an author who is either born in one of those states or lives in one of those states now. So let me go ahead, start searching through my books and see what we have. If we have any options, it may just be one option. I don't know how long this will take, but I'm going to start searching through some of these books, and I'll be back once I found an option that meets this prompt. I've searched through so many books at this point. Whatever book I find first that has an author from one of these states is going to be the one we are going to go with, no matter what it is. I'm going to continue looking now. That took way too long, but we did it. I found one. We are going with Wooing the Witch Queen by Stephanie Burgess. Stephanie Burgess is from Michigan. Woohoo! She grew up in East Lansing, Michigan, according to the biography. So, yay! All right, I have no idea what this book is about. It came in a subscription box. Let me take a quick peek. So this is a fantasy book that follows Queen Saskia, who is a wicked sorceress who just wrestled the throne from her evil uncle. And she wants only one thing, though, to keep her people safe, which seems like 2 opposite things. Evil sorceress keeping her people safe. What she also needs is someone to manage her chaotic library of magic, and when a mysterious dark wizard arrives at her castle, she hires him as her new librarian on the spot. Then she starts to fall for him, and little does she know that he is on the run with secrets of his own and a fast-growing yearning for the wicked sorceress. So that sounds like it could be an interesting book. It's not super long, which is great. Oh, it's really it's not long at all. It's only a little over 300 pages, which is great. So let's go ahead and add Wooing the Witch Queen to our June TBR. Now we have to find a Kindle book for this prompt, which is a lot easier because I actually make a spreadsheet for all the Kindle books that end up on my Kindle board. So let me look through that real quick and see which authors are from one of those 5 states plus, well, I guess 4 states plus the District of Columbia. All right, so on her list, I am seeing Alabama, California, Connecticut, Florida, Illinois, Maine, which is 1. So that is The Surgeon, which is the first book in the Rizzoli, Rizzoli and Isles book series, which the TV show was based off of. So that would be an option for Maine. We also have Michigan, which is a dystopian book called The Breeders, which I don't really know anything about. Oh, one from Washington, D.C., which is The Girl with the Pearl Earrings, which is a book I've heard about. Don't really know too much about what it is, except it is based off of the famous painting by the same name. And those are our options. All right, I'll put those options on one of these sides of the boards that we are going to choose from. So the first one I'm going to roll out is The Surgeon, which is the first book in the Rizzoli and Isle series, only because I know this is a super long series and I already have several super long series going. So if I don't need to start a new super long series, I am not going to. So we're going to roll that one out. And that leaves us with The Girl with a Pearl Earring and The Breeders. So The Breeders is by Katie French. It's also the first book in the series by the same name. It follows 16-year-old Riley, whose family is trying to keep her out of the hand of the Breeders, which is a group of doctors who are doing cruel experiments to try to bolster the dwindling human race. The Breeders finally catch up with her family and they kidnap the adult members of her family, including her mother, who they hand over to the Breeders. Her and her brother are kind of left to fend for themselves until they run into a man named Clay, who is determined to help make up for his past sins. The only problem is that Clay thinks Riley is a bender, which is a genderless mutation, neither male nor female, and now Riley has to decide if she can trust him with her secret that she is actually a female and that the Breeders are after her. So that's kind of the gist of that story. So that is our first option. And then we have Girl with a Pearl Earring by Tracy Chevalier. This book was published way back in 1999. And I also remember this book being popular back then. I heard of it, never really read it. I think it's like a historical fiction book that is based on the famous painting by the same name. It tells the story of a 16-year-old Griette whose life is transformed by her brief encounter with genius, even as she herself is immortalized in canvas and oil. So it basically tells the story of the girl in that painting. So out of these 2 books, I think I am going to go with The Girl with a Pearl Earring just because it is not a series, and I've already started some series in this month already. So we'll put that one as our Kindle option for our prompt for an author that is born in a random state, which our states are listed up there. I don't remember them anymore off the top of my head. So that completes our 4th roll, or 5th roll. Yeah, no, 4th. I'm already losing track. That completes our 4th roll of the game. So let's go ahead, bring up the game board, and do our 5th roll for June. All right, we're already on roll number 5. And that is a 6. We've passed our first boarding pass and landed on yellow. All right, we got another good roll on our 5th roll, and that is a 6, and we landed on yellow. So let's grab that bag and see what prompts we're choosing from. Whoa. All right, so here's my yellow bag. The yellow bag is my favorite bag for springtime, and that is because it includes all our seasonal prompts that change each month. So for this month, we have prompts that have to do with springtime, prompts that have to do with June, and the 2 astrological signs in June, which are Gemini and Cancer. So let's go ahead and grab the cards, mix them up, and see what we are going to get for our next prompt for June. I always love these prompts because they are unique every time, every month. All right, so let's go ahead, split the deck there. This will be our prompt. It's going to be a June prompt. I think that focused. And it is a book with 6 words in the title, since June is the 6th month of the year. All right, it is time to start counting words in the title. I remember the first time I got a prompt like this, I totally miscounted the number of words in the title. So hopefully we'll do okay this month. But let me start looking through our physical book options and see which books have 6 words in the title. All right, so I did find 2 book options that have 6 words in the title. We have The Scorpion and the Night Blossom, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And we have Dark Star Burning, Ash Falls White, also 6. These books also happen to be by the same author. I'm not quite sure how to pronounce her name, but Amelie Wenzhou. I have read one other book by her, and that was the first book in this series, which was called Song of Silver, Flame Like Night. And I did enjoy her writing, so I'm looking forward to reading the second book by her. So our first option, like I said, Song of Silver, Flame Like Night, is the sequel to Song of Silver, Flame... No, I just did that entirely wrong. So this book, Dark Star Burning, Ash Falls White, is a sequel to Song of Silver, Flame Like Night. It's set in a fantasy world. It's based on mythology. The city that the main character lives in, has been taken over by the Elatians. And when they took over where she lives, they ended up killing her mother. One day she finds a strange mark on her body, and this boy named Lan, who happens to be a fabled practitioner of magic, one of the last, recognizes that mark, that she has magic within her. And so now the 2 of them are out to fight the Elatians and to win back their kingdom. And this book kind of continues that journey that they find themselves on to see who will win the battle for the last kingdom. So that's our first option. And then our second option is The Scorpion and the Night Blossoms, which I think is the first book in a series. I'm not sure what the series is called. But this book follows An Ying, who is entering the immortality trials in an attempt to save her dying mother. The immortality trials are a second chance in a brutal world and open to any mortal willing to risk the journey to the immortal realm, and the prize for completing them is eternal life. So when a rival contestant promises protection and a chance of survival for both An Ying and her mother, she has to figure out quickly if she can truly trust this stranger, or if he's the most dangerous player of all. All right, so out of these 2 books, I am going to go with The Scorpion and the Night Blossom. Even though the other book I would finish the series, I am just intrigued by the premise of this book. I love books that have trials in them because I'm always interested to see what new things the author comes up with to put in these trials. And I cannot wait to see what happens in this book. So this will be the next book that we will add on to our TBR. All right, let me see what book choices I have on my Kindle board that have 6 words in the title, and I'll be right back. All right, we have 2 books to choose from for this. We have The Last Thing He Told Me, which is 6 words, by Laura Dave, and we have The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, which is also 6 words, by Stieg Larsson. So The Last Thing He Told Me is on my 25 books to read in 2025 list. So this is a mystery book that follows Hannah, whose husband, Owen Michaels, disappeared. And before he disappeared, he smuggled a note to his wife that said, "Protect her." Hannah knows exactly who he's talking about. His 16-year-old daughter, Bailey, who lost her mother tragically as a child and wants nothing to do with her new stepmother, Hannah. As things start to happen, Hannah realizes that her husband isn't who he said he was, and that Bailey may hold the key to figuring out who Owen's true identity is and why he really disappeared. So this book actually won the Goodreads Choice Award for Mystery and Thriller as well. Then we have The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, which is the first book in the Millennium series. I actually copied the wrong book into my notes for this one, so we're going to play it by ear. Basically, it's a mystery book that's set, I think, in Sweden. It's a thriller sort of book that follows middle-aged journalist Mikael Blomqvist, who publishes a magazine called The Millennium in Stockholm, and has just lost a libel case involving damaging allegations about billionaire Swedish industrialist Hans-Erik Wennerström. At the same time, the uncle of Harriet Wenger, who was one of Sweden's wealthiest families, disappeared over 40 years ago, and her uncle wants to seek the truth of what really happened to her. So he ends up hiring Mikael to investigate. And Mikael hires the prodigy Lisbeth Salander, and together they end up finding astonishing corruption. So, not really much to the synopsis for this book. But other important things about this book is that the color of the book cover is yellow, and I have to read a book with a yellow cover on it. So that makes me lean a little bit towards that. So I have to see which one I want to go for this prompt, especially when I really want to read the physical book. I think I'm going to go with The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. So I do at least have one yellow book cover on this TBR. I'm hoping that I can put another one on later on so I don't necessarily end up having to read this, but we'll see. So we will go with The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo by Stieg Larsson as our Kindle book choice for a book with 6 words in the title. All right, so let's bring up the game board and do our 6th roll of the game. All right, let's keep up with these high numbers. Here we go for roll number 6. 1. So much for the high numbers. Orange. Back to low numbers again. We only rolled a 1, but we landed on a new color, and that was orange. So let's grab that bag and choose our next prompt. All right, so in this bag, we have prompts that have to do with the plot of the book. We have some miscellaneous and some series prompts as well. All right, let's mix these up and see what we get. All right, what card should we go with? Let's go with this one here. Oh, we have a plot prompt. Next book in a series. Perfect. Let's get some more series completed. All right, I'm actually happy about this prompt. I always like reading down my series. So let's see what physical book options we have for our next book in the series, and then we will choose the Kindle one as well. All right. While I really want to choose the second book in the Zodiac Academy series, I have to play it smart this game because I am playing a mythology-based reading game that could end up getting me a lot of extra books to read outside my TBR. So if I have a chance to put some of those books on that are potential reads, I should be doing that. So I am going to go with Dark Star Burning Ash Falls White. And we already kind of talked about this book, but this is the one that is set in the Last Kingdom that follows Lan and Zen and the battle over good and evil, who's going to control the Last Kingdom at the end. So we will add this to our TBR because it is a book based on mythology. So it's a book I could read for my mythology-based reading game if it meets a prompt or if it gets pulled as on my spinner wheels for that game. So let's add this to our TBR. This is the second book in the series, so it meets the prompt. All right, and then along that same theme for our Kindle book, we are going to go with Magnus Chase and the Gods of Asgard, which is the second book in the Magnus Chase series by Rick Riordan. That follows Magnus Chase, who is I believe he's a demigod. He is the son of a Norse god. So this book is based a lot on Norse mythology and therefore could also be an option on my mythology-based reading game. Like I said, this is the second book in the Magnus Chase series, so it is the next book in the series. So that's perfect. All right, time to bring up the game board again and do our 7th roll of the game. I can't believe how high we are getting up on these rolls. All right, roll number 7 gives us a 3. Just missed the time for vacation token. 1, 2, 3, another blue. If we keep rolling these low numbers, we are going to be here all night. So for 7th roll, we rolled a 3. We landed on blue once again. So let's grab that bag and choose our next prompt. So this bag again has our title, miscellaneous, and series prompts. All right, I think this is our 3rd time choosing from this bag. So hopefully we have some good prompts left in here. All right, let's go near the top. All right, we're going to do this one. So it's a title prompt. There we go. All right, so a title with a word related to reading. All right, we've had this one before. I'm going to choose the same book that I chose last time for it, which is Where the Library Hides, because this book is also based on mythology, and I do really want to read it. So this is the second book in the series by Isabel Ibanez. The first one was What the River Knows, and this book series follows Inez, whose parents disappeared in Egypt, and she ended up going to Egypt to figure out what happened to her parents, and she came across this whole kind of like plot that is going on in the series. She also manages to find a boy named Whitford who she starts to fall in love with. So this is a conclusion to that series. It is a duology. It is a historical fiction series that takes place back in the 1800s. Like I said, I really enjoyed the first book, and I'm excited to complete the series and see how the second book ends. So this will be our option for a book that has a word related to reading in it, because it has a library, which is obviously related to reading. All right, let me see what we have on our Kindle board. If there's any books that have to do with reading that are left. We already took down the Book of Doors, which would have been a good option. Hopefully there'll be a second one. All right, so the book we are going to go with is called Writers of the Future, Volume 30, which writers have to do with reading. You can't read if no one's writing books. So this is a collection of science fiction and fantasy books that are submitted by new upcoming authors. They are all short stories that fall in the speculative fiction realm. And I've read several of these volumes in the past, and I've really enjoyed the short stories. A lot of these authors end up going on to become bestsellers. So I'm going to go ahead and put this on to our TBR. Also, this is going to fit my Reddit fancy bingo board for an anthology of short stories. So there's more than 5 short stories in here. So I can choose, and it will also fit the hard prompt because I'm going to read the entire anthology. So this will be our book choice, our Kindle book choice for this prompt, a book with a word in the title that has to do with reading. All right, moving onward. Let's bring up the game board, do our 8th roll of the game. All right, here's roll number 8. Oops, that didn't count. Here we go. A 1. What is going on? Yellow. All right, these small rolls are really slowing this game down. We rolled a 1. We landed on yellow, at least. That's the saving grace of this roll. So let's grab that bag and choose our next prompt. So again, this bag holds our seasonal prompts that have to do with June, spring, Gemini, and Cancer. Astrological signs. All right, let's mix these up. I can't believe we are already on 8 books and we still have a good ways to go. This game definitely not being as nice as May. This is a lot of books to read. All right. We need a good prompt here. All right, we're going to go with this one here, which is another prompt that has to do with June. So a title that starts with K or L. K or L. All right. If you're doing 2 letters per month, that's how we get to K and L for June. Let me look through our choices, see what books we have that start with either K or L. So we had 3 options. So our first option was Lady Macbeth, which is way up there, which is why I haven't grabbed it. And it's not really one that I'm feeling in the mood to read for in June at the moment. So we're going to look through the 2 other options I have, which are The Liar's Crown by Abigail Owen, starts with L, and Kingmakers by Sophie Lark, starts with K. So these are both fantasy books. The Liar's Crown follows twin princesses. It follows the one that is born second, who has only one purpose in her life, and that is to sacrifice her life for her sister if death comes for her. Now the queen is dead, and a King Eidolon has sent her sister a gift and a proposal to wed. But the second sister, I don't know her name, doesn't trust him. So she secretly takes her place on the eve of the coronation, which is why when someone tries to kidnap the princess, the second twin ends up getting kidnapped instead. That is our first option. Our second option is Kingmakers by Sophie Lark. This takes place at a ruthless mafia university where the offspring of the world's most feared families come to master the dark arts of influence and intimidation. So kind of like a dark academia vibe, with a little romance on the side. So those are 2 options. I'm really struggling between these 2 because I really love dark academia, but this book with the kidnapped princess, the Shadow Wraith, also sounds really interesting. I thought for sure I was going to go with this one, but I think I am going to go with The Liar's Crown by Abigail Owen. I don't know. There's something that in this premise that is really grabbing me, and I really want to know how this plot turns out. So this will be our option for this book. Starts with an L, so checks off the prompt. All right. Then for our Kindle books, we do have several options, but I'm going to go with the last thing he told me since this book is on my 25 books to read in 2025. We talked about earlier. It's the book where the husband disappears and the stepdaughter may carry the secret that can help his new wife figure out who he really is. There we go. That's a pretty good summary of that plot. So that will be our Kindle option, the last thing he told me. We don't count the as part of the letter, so starts with an L. All right, how many more rolls can we do in this game? We still haven't even gotten to the danger part of the board yet, but let's go ahead, bring up this game board, do our 9th roll, hope for the best. All right, here we are at roll number 9. We need a bigger number than a 1 or a 3. A 4, well, technically that is bigger than both a 1 and a 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, blue. All right, a 4 is better than a 1. We ended up on blue again. I feel like we're going to run out of prompts in the blue bag at this rate. So, obviously, this is the bag that has our title prompts, miscellaneous prompts, and series prompts, as I've said 3 times before that. All right, let's just mix these up one more time. It's getting late. I didn't think this was going to take this long to record. It's almost tea time. All right, we're going to split the deck there. This will be our prompt. See if we can get to focus. It's a miscellaneous prompt. Yeah, I think that's focus. All right. An author's first name starts with a random letter. Oh, goodness. These either go really good or really bad. We'll find out which way it goes this time. All right, so here's our wheel. Let's go ahead and spin it and hope that we get a good letter. Let's do this. I need like an S. T, a V. All right. I don't know if I have any books where the author's name starts with the letter V, the first name. Let me take a look and see what we got. If not, we may have to spin again. Let me look first on physical book. We do have 2 books whose author's first name starts with V, which is pretty impressive, I feel. We have The Court of Shadows by Victor Dixon, starts with V. And The Gilded Cage by Vic James, starts with V. These are definitely not books that are up there on my priority list in my TBR, so it would have probably been a while till I got to them. So, that's the fun of prompts. You never know what you're going to get. So Gilded Cage looks like it's kind of like a historical fantasy book where the world belongs to the equals, who are aristocrats with magical gifts, and all commoners must serve them for 10 years. Abby is a servant to England's most powerful family, but her spirit is free, so when she falls for one of their noble-born sons, she faces a terrible choice. Uncovering the family's secrets might win her liberty, but will her heart pay the price? Her brother Luke, on the other hand, is stuck in a brutal factory town. Far from his family and cruelly oppressed, he makes friends whose ideals could cost him everything. And now Luke has discovered there may be a power even greater than magic, revolution. And then there's a aristocrat who is a shadow in the glittering world of the equals with mysterious powers no one else understands. But will he liberate or destroy? So, fantasy book, fantasy book where there's going to be a revolution between those who have everything and those who don't. So that sounds like it could be a good book. Then we have The Court of Shadows, which is a vampire book that follows Louis XIV, who is transformed from the Sun King into the King of Shadows when he embraced immortality and became the world's first vampire. The book follows commoner Jeanne Froidelic, who sees the king's soldiers murdering her family and learns of her parents' role in a brewing rebellion involving the forbidden secrets of alchemy. To seek her revenge, she must disguise herself as an aristocrat, enroll in a prestigious school for aspiring courtiers. And she soon finds herself at the doors of the Palace of Versailles. But she is no aristocrat. She dreams not of court, but of blood, the blood of a king. So, both books are actually more similar than I thought they would be. They both have to do with revolution. I think I'm going to go with this book only because I've had it a lot longer than this one, so I feel like in the scheme of things, I should probably read this one first. So this will be our physical book option, Gilded Cage by Vic James, for authors whose first name starts with the letter V. Let me see if there's any options on our physical board, or not our physical board, our Kindle board. All right, so we have no book options for our Kindle choices, which means we will just have to read Gilded Cage to complete that prompt. So no big deal. All right, let's do our 10th roll of the game. Roll number 10 is a 5. 1, 2, 3, 4. Another blue. Jeez. Oh, we're landing on our blue. All right, we got a 5. Moving forward, slowly but surely. Sure, steady. I don't know, whatever you want to say. And we got blue again. So, choosing from the same card stack as before with the title, series, and miscellaneous prompts. Hopefully, an easier prompt than the last one. You know, a nice, good prompt that gives me a lot of options. All right, let's split the deck here. This will be our prompt. It's a title prompt. And it is a book with a color in the title. All right, so that can be any color. It just has to be a color. Silver, gold, red, yellow. It doesn't matter. I don't know if I have any of those left. I've used this prompt. Have I used this prompt in the past? I don't remember. But let me look through and see if I have any books left that have names of colors in the title. All right, we actually had more than I thought we would, but I've narrowed it down to 2, and we have Of Jade and Dragons. Jade is a color, it's a type of green. And we have the Crimson Moth, with crimson being a color. Crimson Moth, I still haven't read. I know it's super popular, and everyone who reads it tends to really love it. The second book in the series is out, but I ordered a special edition version that doesn't come out for a while. So that's why I'm leaning towards not reading this one, because I would really like to have that second book before I get into this one, so I don't have to wait forever to read it, to read the sequel. There we go. So because of that, I think I'm going to go with Of Jade and Dragons by Amber Chen. This is a thicker book than I thought it was. Well, it's only like 400 pages, but the type is relatively large, so that's good. So this is another mythology-based book which follows an 18-year-old who dreams of becoming a world-class engineer like her father, but then her father ends up murdered, and she is left only with a journal of her father's engineering secrets and a jade pendant snatched from the assassin. So Ying follows the trail to the capital in the prestigious Engineers Guild, a place that harbors her father's hidden past. So she ends up putting on a disguise to be her brother so she can infiltrate the male-only apprenticeship trial with the help of an unlikely ally who is the nation's taciturn 8th prince. She wants to avenge her father, basically. So that is the book we are going with, Of Jade and Dragons, and I'm excited to get this one onto the list as well. We got trials, we got guilds. What else could we ask for on this TBR? All right, let's see if we have a Kindle book option real quick. All right, so I did find 2 Kindle book options. They are very different from each other. First up is The Black Echo by Michael Connolly, black being the color in the title. This is the first book in the Harry Bosch series, and it follows LAP detective, homicide detective, Harry, who is now trying to solve the crime where one of his people that he fought with in Vietnam has been murdered later on in life. So that's the first option. All right, our second option is The Velvet Room by Zilpha Keatley Snyder. This book follows 12-year-old Robin, who has found this velvet room that's become kind of a haven for her growing up in the Great Depression. It's a place for her to read and dream, bury one's fears and doubts, and a place for her to count on. So this seems to follow her childhood growing up in the Great Depression. So that will be our book choice. Velvet being the color. That's a color, right? I don't know. Let's double check before we say that. According to Siri, velvet can be a color, so we are going with it. All right, what roll are we up to? I don't even know. I think we are on roll 11, so let's go ahead and bring up the game board and do our 11th roll of the game. All right, we are in the official danger zone. I just don't have a good feeling about this. Here we go. Roll number 11. A 1. Well, that's semi-good. Yellow. I see we are back to rolling low numbers again. We rolled a 1, but we did end up on yellow again, so at least we have that going for us. So again, these are our seasonal prompts. We have the astrological signs of Cancer and Gemini, as well as prompts that have to do with June and springtime. This is getting way too big of a stack over here. All right. Just gonna shuffle these cards real quick. If we land on one of those tokens where we have to start over, I don't know what I'm going to do. It's going to be a June whose TBR is not completed if I end up on one of those tokens. All right, here we go. Let's split the deck here. This seems like a good one. Oh, we have a spring prompt this time. It does not want to. There we go. All right, a book that has been sitting on my TBR for a while. Well, that's pretty easy. Pretty sure we have a lot of those. I just have to choose one. So I need another book with a yellow color as an option. And this book has been on my TBR for a very long time. I don't even know how long. I got it at a used book sale that I went to many, many years ago because I haven't been to it at all recently. And therefore, I know this has been on my TBR for forever. And it has a yellow cover, so it's like perfect. So this book is called Summer Light. It's by Luann Rice. It's a romance book. We also don't have any true romances on here. And it follows May Taylor, who is a wedding planner passing on the timeless traditions of her grandmother and mother. She has a daughter named Kylie, who's a very special 5-year-old who sees and hears things that others cannot. And then Martin Cartier is a professional hockey player and sports legend. His father, a champion who taught him to play to win at all costs. And while his success feels a core of heartache, rage, and isolation, Kylie glimpses the transcendent role Martin will play in May's life and her own, unless his past tears their blossoming love apart. Then only Kylie will see the way home, and only May will be able to lead them there if she can believe in magic once more. So it's kind of like a magical realism, a little bit of fantasy, but not like a romantasy type book. So it sounds interesting. I'm excited to read it and see how it goes. All right, let me see the oldest book on my Kindle TBR. All right, so I feel like this book has been on my TBR for a long time. It's called The Color of Heaven, and it's by Julianne McGlane, and it's book 1 in the Color of Heaven series. This book shows up on my monthly TBR list a lot for the Kindle ebooks, but I've never actually chosen it, and I feel like I've owned this book for forever. So this book follows Sophie Duncan, a successful columnist whose world starts falling apart after her daughter's unexpected illness and her husband's shocking affair. Then her car skids off an icy road and plunges into a frozen lake. There, Sophie experiences something profound and extraordinary. So this will be the book that we add to this prompt for a book that has been on my TBR for a while. All right, we gotta be close to ending this game. This is getting a little bit too much over here. All right, so let's bring up our 10th, 12. I'm combining 10 and 12. Let's bring up our 12th roll of the game. This is, you can tell when I start mixing words and putting them together, this has been going on for a long time. 12th roll of the game, let's do this. All right, we need a 1, 2, 3, 6, or an 8. Those are the only safe numbers. Here we go. For roll number 12. A 2, that is safe. 1, 2, and a book from our yearly TBR jar. Perfect. All right, a 2. It is only a 2, but at least we didn't land on any of the time for vacation or boarding passes. So we have that going for us. And we also landed on our yearly TBR jar, which is good because I need to get some of those books read. So let me grab that jar and we'll choose our next book. So in here is my 25 books to read in 2025 book covers. I have not been doing too well at this challenge. Hopefully the second half of the year will go much better. But let's go ahead and pull which book we will read this month out of here. Now, if we get like the last thing he told me, I think that's what it's called, then that is great because that's already on our TBR and that will be 2 books, 1 book knocking off 2 rolls. But we did that last month. I don't know if it's going to happen 2 months in a row. Not with the way this game is going. All right, here we go. Nope, we will be reading The Courting of Bristol Keats by Mary E. Pearson. That's actually a physical book, so let me grab that. Oh, this is another long book. This TBR is not going great. How many pages is this one? 550 pages. And the writing's not even like huge. All right. This is not the book we needed out of that jar this month. I do really want to read this, don't get me wrong. It's just, this may not have been the month for it. Anyway, so this book follows Bristol Keats and her sisters who lost both of their parents, and they're kind of just struggling to stay afloat in their small, quiet town of Bowes Keep. Bristol starts to receive these letters from an aunt she's never heard of who promises to help, and she starts to discover that everything she thought she knew about her family is actually a lie. Her father may even be alive, kidnapped by terrifying creatures from another realm. So, desperate to save her father, she ends up traveling to a land of gods, fae, and monsters, and there she makes a deadly bargain with the fae leader. But what she doesn't know is that he's the one who drove her parents to live a life on the run, and he is just as determined as her to find her father, dead or alive. So this is another adult fiction fantasy. It's a debut by this author. Like I said, I was very interested to read it when I read the premise, so I'm looking forward to it. I just really didn't want a 500-page book on this particular TBR, but that is where we are. So, yay. All right, let's do this. We are getting so close to these boarding passes and time for vacation tokens, but let's go ahead and do our 13th roll of the game. 13. All right, let's bring up the game board. All right, this game is building up the tension, and we're on roll number 13, and we still have the 3 scary tokens ahead of us. This game is trying to be cinema here. Here we go, roll number 13. A 6. 3, 4, 5, 6. We did it. We completed the game without landing on any of those tokens at the end. I felt for sure we were going to. All right, so that will be a pull out of our science fiction fantasy award-winning nominee jar. Thank goodness we rolled a 6. Not only did we finish the game, we skipped over all the scary tokens. And we needed to do that because this is our 13th roll. This is our 13th book on our June TBR. If we had to start over, who knows how many books we would have had on this TBR. But we have made it to the end. We are choosing our last book, which is from our Science Fiction Fantasy Award-winning / nominee jar. So let me grab that jar and see what we get for our final book for June. All right, so in here are 70 books that are award winners or nominees of the Hugo, Locust, Nebula, and Golden Duck Awards. So these books range anywhere from middle grade all the way up to adult. And they are chosen randomly to be put in here, so I don't even remember half the books that are in here. All right. This is always like a scary pull for me because I have no idea. We could be reading books from 1960s up to 2025. All right, which one should I choose? I don't know. All right. There's 2 in my hand. We'll go with this one. All right, we're doing this one here. Put the lid back on. Put that over here. All right, again, if this doesn't focus, I'll be putting the cover up here as well. All right, here we go. All right, we have Ursula K. Le Guin, and it's called The Dispossess. So we know the author is a really good author. Well, I mean, they are award-winning nominees, so most of the authors are really good. I have not heard of this particular book by her, so let me take a quick look at the summary and I'll let you know what this book is about. So The Dispossess is actually a book that is part of the Hamish Cycle series. It's technically book 6 in the series, but all the books are standalone. They just happen to be set in the same universe. So you can read them in any order that you want. So this book actually won the Hugo, Locust, and Nebula Awards for Best Novel. It's one of the few books that won all 3 awards, which is pretty amazing. Unfortunately, it's not a short book. It's not a super long one either. It's only 387 pages, but I was kind of hoping for like a 200-page book, but that's okay. Anyway, this book follows Shevik, who's a brilliant physicist deciding to take action. He will seek answers, question the unquestionable, and attempt to tear down the walls of hatred that have isolated his planet of Antarctus from the rest of the civilized universe. But to do this dangerous task will mean giving up his family and possibly his life. He must make the unprecedented journey to the utopian mother planet Eurus to challenge the complex structures of life and living and ignite the fires of change. So it sounds good. I'm excited to read it. like I said, it's so rare for a book to win all 3 of those awards that I'm excited to see how this book reads. But that is the last book of the game, which is amazing. We only have 13 books. I think I was right to be a little bit nervous about this month. All right, let's go ahead and do a rundown of the books on our June TBR. I don't know if I can lift these. This will be a very quick lift, and then we'll run through the books. All right, here are the books, plus 1 additional one. 2 additional ones, rather. Okay, so let's run through these. These are in size order because that was the easiest way to pick them up. All right, so for a book that has been on my TBR for a while, we have Summer Light by Luann Rice and The Color of Heaven by Julianne McLean. I'll probably read Summer Light for this one. For a book talk or booktube book, we have Finley Donovan is Killing It by Elle Cosimano and The Book of Doors by Gareth Brown. I'll probably read Finley Donovan for this one. For a book whose author's first name starts with a V, we have Gilded Cage by Vic James, and that's our only option because our Kindle books didn't have a book that started with V. For a book that starts with K or L, we have The Lion's Crown by Abigail Owen and The Last Thing He Told Me by Laura Dave. I don't know which one I'm going to read for this one. This is a 25 and 2025 book, but this one sounds really interesting. So we'll have to see what mood I'm in when I get to that prompt. For a author from a random state, we have Wooing the Witch Queen by Stephanie Burgess and Girl with a Pearl Earring by Tracy Chevalier. I'm leaning towards Wooing the Witch Queen for this one. For the prompt next book in the series, we have Dark Star Burning, Ash Falls White by Amelie Wenzhou, or Magnus Chase and the Gods of Asgard for Rick Riordan. This will kind of depend on Mythology Game. If I don't read either of these books during that game, I'll probably lean towards Dark Star Burning, Ash Falls White. Then for a book with 6 words in the title, we have The Scorpion and the Night Blossom by Amelie Wenzhou and The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo by Stieg Larsson. Probably going to read The Scorpion and the Night Blossom. Then for a book with a color in the title, we have Of Jade and Dragons by Amber Chen and The Velvet Room by Zilpha Keatley Snyder. Unless I read this book for my mythology reading game, I'm going to read The Velvet Room for this one. Then for a title with a word related to reading, we have Where the Library Hides by Isabel Ibanez and Writers of the Future Volume 30. I will probably go with Writers of the Future Volume 30 because this month I need to read a anthology book, which that one is. All right, then we had a book with a name in the title. We have Emily Wilde's Map of the Otherlands by Heather Fawcett and Angela's Ashes by Frank McCourt. I'll probably read Emily Wilde for this one. All right, then we have our 3 jar pulls for our 25 books to read in 2025. We got The Courting of Bristol Keats by Mary E. Pearson. For our series jar pull, we got The Infinite Sea, the second book in the 5th Wave series by Rick Yancey. And then for our science fiction fantasy award-winning / nominee jar, we got The Dispossessed by Ursula K. Le Guin. So those are our 13 books that we have to read in June. Am I optimistic? No. Can I do it? Maybe. It's going to depend on how my other reading games go in this month. But I'm excited to give it a good shot and get one of those boarding passes off of my game board. Thank you so much for joining me for this video. I hope you enjoyed watching it as much as I enjoyed playing it. Let me know what is on your TBR for the month of June, or if you've read any of these books on my TBR, let me know what you think of them. Again, coming up for my videos in June, which should be coming out every Friday, we are going to have a scavenger hunt reading challenge. We'll have a mythology-based reading game, which I'm super excited about. And then a color wheel challenge that has a little bit of a twist to it. And then the last Friday of June will be my July TBR video. If you've enjoyed this video, please hit the like button. If you want to see future videos by me, including those that are coming out this month in June, please hit that subscribe button. And if you have watched this video all the way to the end and want to let me know, just put some dragon emojis in the comments below for our book choice of Jade and Dragons. Thank you again for joining me for this video. I'm super excited for that next video coming out, which will be my scavenger hunt. And that will be coming out next Friday. So I will see you in my next video. Take care. Bye.